Hi, I've been getting some questions about how was I able to work a 9 to 5 while working at Goldman Sachs. So I thought I'd explain. A lot of people assume that I was an investment banker there, but I wasn't. I was a product manager, which basically meant I was working tech hours, but getting Goldman Sachs pay. And not a lot of people talk about this route because most people don't go to Goldman for the tech division, but there is one, and I actually thought it was really nice to be in that to start my career. If you're interested in this, I had other friends who were also in tech, and there was a whole tech analyst class. The latest they would work was until 7 or 8, but they definitely weren't doing crazy hours like an investment banker would because they didn't have live deals that they were working on. It was more if they had to do a production release and things went wrong and they had to stay later to fix it. Sometimes these were for trading systems, so it was kind of urgent, but it was after hours because you don't release during the day. The pay was okay if you were in tech. It wasn't as good as the other parts of the bank, but it was pretty decent and very comparable. I will say I did have pretty bad imposter syndrome because I was doing tech at a big bank and not like a FANG company like a lot of my friends who did tech were. And it wasn't until I worked at a startup after Goldman that I felt a little bit less of that imposter syndrome. The way I got my internship was through on-campus recruiting. Goldman would send representatives to the college campus I was at to interview students. And if you're in college, you might also have a program like that for your college campus. I also worked on side projects outside of classes, so I was able to speak to all of that, how it worked, how it was designed, and then the technical details of how it was set up. That's what I talked about during my interviews. There was one question that was asked in the first round, and it was like, how do you optimize meetings in a calendar? It was some kind of question to test your thinking around algorithms, but I really struggled my way through that question because I didn't really study algorithms that much to prepare. But then the second interview, I just remember showing up with my laptop and I was like, this is my portfolio. I talked about how that was built, the front end, the back end details, what database we used, how it was set up. And that was the bulk of the conversation. The round after that was the final on-site round. I did the same thing where I brought my laptop, showed my portfolio, I talked about my past projects, and that was pretty much every interview during the on-site. That's most likely how I got my internship. And then during that internship, I networked and then got my return offer for product management. And I felt like that saved my butt during the internship because I know that I wasn't that good as a front-end developer, and I didn't think I would get a return offer from my direct manager. So I knew I needed to get a return offer from somebody else who would see my potential. So I ended up doing interesting things, but I stayed for probably way too long. If you're in the same boat and you want to work at a big brand name company, but you don't want the crazy hours, my recommendation is to look at the other sides that aren't directly client facing, like basically what you would be considered as back office, or you can try to find the startup within the big company. This is something called intrapreneurship, where you're an entrepreneur inside in an established place. And that's a really cool place to be because usually you might get some more client-facing exposure, but because it's a newer place, it's kind of treated like a startup. You get slightly different rules. It's a little more scrappy. So it can feel like you're in a startup, but you have the stability of a big company. And that's the group that I ended up being. That's how I ended up pretty much working a 9 to 5 because I was working as a tech product manager. And if you want to hear that story of why I ended up leaving, you can watch this video next.